Hi, I'm Travis Boley with the Oregon-California Trails Association, and today I'm standing in the snow in front of what is largely regarded as the founding statue of Kansas City. It features here on the right famed mountain man Jim Bridger, who owned a store here in the Westport neighborhood of Kansas City. Seated next to him is John Calvin McCoy, who's credited with founding Westport, and behind him is the famous freighter and Pony Express boss Alexander Majors. Those three guys kind of get lumped in as the founders of Kansas City in a sense. And why am I standing out here in the snow? Well, what's now Westport Road and Broadway. Broadway runs north-south, Westport runs east-west. Westport was, in the trail days, the Santa Fe, the Oregon, the California Trail. That was the road to Oregon. And we're going to explore quite a bit of what remains of the trail era Westport today. Buried under the snow under there is a large map of the American West depicting all of the trails going west. And contrary to popular belief, wagon trains, especially to and from Santa Fe, did continue to run through the winter. Many times they would get caught in snow and storms like this. There's many stories of large numbers of mules and even people dying on the trail due to this sort of weather by traveling in the winter time. We're here at the northeast corner of Pennsylvania and Westport Road. This is really the heart of Westport. It was right here at this corner that a young 22-year-old John Calvin McCoy built his two-story log cabin. It quickly became an outfitting place for fur traders, for missionaries, for traders on the Santa Fe Trail, for the local Indians who were just across what's now the border into Kansas and the missions over there. So it rapidly grew. By 1844, John Harris had built his Harris House Hotel here. It was a three-story hotel. It was brick. It was really ahead of its time for Westport. He would later, in 1855, build his house just down the street here at what is now the corner of Westport and Main. It's since been moved over to Baltimore Street. Directly to the west of the Harris House today stands Kelly's Westport Inn, and right behind it, Bridger's. Bridger's is soon to be reopened as a bar. Originally, these two buildings were built about the same time, 1850-ish. Probably the oldest buildings remaining in what is now Kansas City, Missouri. Back then, this was just the town of Westport. Today, it's the neighborhood of Westport. Thomas and George Ewing, a couple of brothers, built this building by 1854. They had sold this to Albert Boone, one of the grandsons of Daniel Boone. And in 1866, he parceled off the back half and sold that to Jim Bridger. Jim Bridger's son-in-law ran that mercantile business while this remained the trading post. Bridger by then was living in what's now South Kansas City at about 103rd and State Line was where his farm was located, where he was living out his remaining days with his wives and children. A unique thing about the Kansas City area, there are two major routes of the combined Santa Fe, Oregon, and California Trail that come out of this area. Independence route was an older route established in 1827. This route was a little later, 1834-ish, thereabouts, maybe a little earlier. The Westport route, and I'm walking west along what was the Westport route. More or less, that was the starting point of the trail heading west. Just in less than a mile, you would be in Kansas. And there were mostly Santa Fe Trail traders coming out of this area, and they would have had much larger wagons. They were carrying trade goods bound for Santa Fe. Anything that could be traded from livestock to agricultural foodstuffs, and bringing back, of course, mules, sheep, and Mexican silver, which was a really important thing. Of course, the wagons bound for California and Oregon would have been much smaller, and hence you've had the two stories there, the trading post, which might have sold you goods bound for Santa Fe, and the mercantile store next door, which would have sold you more of the goods you would need on the trail if you were heading to Oregon and California. Largely foodstuffs, but maybe even guns and clothing and boots and blankets and things of that nature. Before the Reverend Isaac McCoy built his cabin at what's now 43rd and Warnell, and before John Calvin McCoy built his trading post a block to the east here at Pennsylvania and Westport, here at this corner, there used to be a creek that ran right under the street here called the Spring Branch. And behind me, a man from Tennessee named Daniel Yoakum built a log cabin right there. This was where the first residence, Anglo residence in what is now Westport, was built. Before English-speaking peoples settled in what's now Westport, the French had a presence here for well over a century. Even as early as 1713, Etienne Vignard set out to map from the Cause mouth, the mouth of the Kansas River where it dumps into the Missouri River in what's now downtown Kansas City, west towards Santa Fe. So by 1713, he's out there for Louis XIV, mapping what became the Santa Fe Trail. And he was really smart in that he gave a lot of gifts to the Comanches, who really ruled the high plains of Kansas in those days, and secured treaty rights for the French to travel between what is now Kansas City and Santa Fe as early as the 1710s. So the Santa Fe Trail really goes back in time a lot farther, and even before that, it was a common trade and travel route of the American Indians that have populated this continent for thousands of years. In 1855, John Harris, the proprietor of the Harris House, built at what is now the southwest corner of Westport in Maine. Today, a apartment complex is being built on the old site of what was the Katz Drugstore Company, later Osco Drugs. He had a 5-acre tract there, and he built this Greek Revival house there in 1855. In 1922, when it was threatened with demolition, it was moved to this site at 40th and Baltimore. It's called the Harris-Kearney house because after John Harris and his wife Henrietta died, their daughter Josephine Harris-Kearney inherited the house. Today the house is managed and ran by the Westport Historical Society. They do a great job of keeping the house restored, and tours are offered, probably not on a day like today, but check their website for 2 hours and other information. Please like, subscribe, and share this content. Be sure to comment below, especially if you've been to Westport and you've got some experience with the historic sites here. Share your knowledge as well. We are a membership organization. You can go to octa-trails.org to find out more there. On our homepage, you'll find information for events that we're holding all across the country from Missouri to the West Coast. We're very much an active historic preservation organization. We invite you to come and share in preserving this great history.